So let me just start off simply. We heard so much today, and I'm just curious your thoughts about what most surprised you or what concerned you or what pleased you. Do you guys have any immediate reaction?
I thought it was great. First of all, thanks again for inviting us and for hosting this conference. I think it's a topic that we're all talking about, but we haven't settled on an answer. And I think today reassured me that it's okay that we haven't.
We don't even have a definition
yet. We don't have a definition.
Right.
You know, just yesterday we were meeting with clients and creative agencies, and when we talk about attribution, everyone is talking about it in a different way. And I think, you know, starting for the industry to get a sense of, you know, really what it is that we're talking about, and starting to land on specific definitions will help us move the products forward.
There's a lot to be done.
I think I agree. I think it's terrific that you did this. You had a fabulous turnout. You and Alice have done a really, really excellent job. I'm concerned that creative didn't come up until, maybe 1 o'clock. And from the formerly ARF programming standpoint. And then, you know, look, I think what we have to really focus on is true north, which is actually the consumer, not the data that we can measure. And from my you know, marketing and packaged goods expertise, too often I would see people change the question to fit what the data was. And I think that if we keep our conversation too much on the data platforms and the data that's available and some of the shiny objects, which are really exciting, but I'll kind of close with answering the question that was asked earlier about the client, because I was a client. So I was referred to as a client from hell by my then soon-to-be husband on a Cocoa Puff study. But you know, I think that the best work comes from when you are a client, from inviting people to create something that will showcase their work in their portfolio, right? So it's just inviting people that are of the group that presented today, help me inspire you and invest to help you do your best. Now, what is your best and what do you want to do in the industry and how can we co-create? And I saw some really wonderful glimpses of that today.
Yeah, because I think so much of this is about vision. There's so much to be done. We're part way there. If we can start to get a clear vision or share some clear visions about the best work, which will inspire those clear visions, it gives you a North Star to move towards.
Get to combine the new technology with isn't Nielsen or, and combine the new technology platforms with the traditional legacy, you know, platforms. Nobody has. I think zero-based budgeting is going to be hard for people to jump over to right
Always,
now.
yeah. Mike, your impression?
I think we're making progress.
He has a skeptical look on his face. I can tell you.
Speaking as you know, for a major advertiser, we don't have what we need. We don't have visibility into how marketing spend affects brand metrics and how those in turn affect sales, and what those lags are and what the cumulative effects are. Market mix modeling addresses it somewhat. For those of you familiar with mix modeling, there's a concept called the base curve, which includes the brand effect, but that's not all that's in there. It's the part of sales that's unexplained by marketing, but it's pretty big typically in most market mix models. The base curve is 80%, 70% of the total impact to sales. So we're very unhappy. I'm very unhappy. There's unrelenting pressure from the CFOs to prove that what we're spending has an impact on the business. They often say that nowhere else in the company is so much money spent so freely without any scant evidence that it really works, that it has any impact. And that's going to increase and get worse and worse and worse over time. And I don't think we have all we need to prove that, you know, the kind of money we're spending is having the kind of impact on the business that a CFO would be happy with.
Well, we're starting to refer to the things that we're missing. I mean, there was so much mentioned, so much covered, and so many issues raised, but still, scant mention of creative, scant mention of the brand, occasional mention of the consumer, but not always so clear we're really talking about the consumer or a cookie or a pixel or a device or a household. And I don't think I heard the word emotion once today. Now, I know it's an analytics crowd and it's we're kind of quantitative here, but you know, what drives consumer decision making more than emotions? I mean, your ARF work showed that.
That's a great point.
For sure.
Yeah.
So how does any of that come into? I mean, Ross, you mentioned you brought up the point about bringing a baseline into attribution models, and suddenly they made more sense. So what do we have to import into
look,
this
but
science.
if you start with your mixed modeling, which most companies are going to need to do, and you roll over to, all right, what's driving the impact of my various spending plans, you get asked, I have $1 to spend, where should I spend it? How should I spend my money?
Yep.
And how do I know if that's going to work or not? Where should I shift to? The question is, then next question should be, well, where is the consumer's heart going to beat faster, right? How can you actually build the brand? And what I would like to see us do, and what I think in the industry we really need to focus on, is the entire brand spending budget, not just the advertising budget. And because a lot, upwards of 60% of the budget is being spent on trade.
Right.
And so we know from the study that we did at the RF, we could unlock $31 billion, but if we actually shifted that to only 50-50, and that's what I think is really keeping the finance people and the marketers up at night. So I think, we can be data rock stars because we know how to unlock these analytics, and we have these fabulous new technology solutions, geolocational. Consumers tell you who they are by where they consume media and where they buy. But I think we have a real opportunity to bring some of those insights to scale and kind of, as you say, Jim, bring the emotion back. But the emotion back into how we tell our story, too, how we convey our point of view to senior management.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, what are you
I was
doing for your clients? Because you help clients build brands. So where's that
go back
in the
to
mix?
Michael's point for a second. We may not have everything, but we're closer than we were 6 months ago.
We're getting
which was
there.
Closer than we were a year ago.
Yeah.
So we can stand up here and say, we don't have the right answers. And I think that's true, and I think that's why today was exciting, because you could sit and hear presentations or hear people speaking on a panel and get so high and think, we are so close, we're almost there. And then you get some questions from the crowd, and you're like, we got a long way to go. And for me, that was reassuring for our business at Media Brands and UM, because we are constantly pushing our clients further, not only to help understand what's working, but actually help them build brands. And so you have those two dynamics going on. But I do think that we're closer than we were.
Yeah, the most exciting thing to me is the strong trend toward individual household-specific information and leveraging that, and being more deterministic and less probabilistic.
Yeah, all the way to
less,
person-based, right?
Less backward-looking and statistical inference-based, and more, fact-based is what I would say. And we at Citi, we partner with several of the people who are here today. We have more than one vendor for marketing measurement and optimization, and the reason we do that is we can't go to one for everything that we need. So we piece together solutions by working with multiple vendors that take multiple approaches, and they're all really good. It's pretty exciting. The problem is they often conflict, and then it's up to us to explain, which one's right, and that leads to doubts about whether any of this works. The thing that I would say that's most important to me is the ability to do rapid cycle testing and market testing. So my advice to everybody here is that if you're doing any of this stuff, whether it's an attribution vendor, a mixed modeling vendor, make sure you get out very quickly into the marketplace, do an in-market test. I used to run the data mining lab at Chase, and that was always the gold standard. You deploy a model, you see how well it works, and then you know whether you got something. And too often, mixed modeling is done and people just blindly, robotically follow it, and they have no idea whether it's actually going to work. So you have to get out with tests as quickly as possible, and rapid cycle testing, keep testing and spending more. And if the tests work, go in that direction. Fund that, whatever channel it is, or copy or creative, whatever seems to work best.
I think that's such a great point. And then I'd like just build on that and say test bigger differences. Test lights on, lights off.
Yeah.
And there were comments today about experimental design. My own experience with experimental design is that if you win or lose at the 0.99 confidence level, it's probably projectable.
Yeah.
And so getting out and testing bigger differences, and then sometimes just getting some of those choices off the table can really actually help build management's confidence. And we were never afraid to have three. We had three different approaches, the back of the envelope, and we would see if there was convergent validity, right? Just see if they were aiming us in some direction.
Right. If you have to work that hard to uncover the truth, it's probably not all that true.
Yeah.
The other thing is that in campaign optimization, in our experience, generates as much lift and boost as actually doing the marketing mix tuning. So you get a certain benefit from tuning the marketing mix overall, and then you get as much benefit by having the ability to do in-campaign optimization in terms of what placements
Yeah.
of what copy creative you put into which channels, which publishers, matching those things, because there are big differences if you have multiple spots.
So is that about
that's-
copy? Is it about matching copy to the medium? Is it about targeting?
It's the medium and the audience.
I want to jump in too.
There are big
just-
differences.
Yeah.
We work with Marketing Evolution. We discovered huge differences really between those kinds of matches, those kinds of targeting.
But in terms of refining the mix, I mean, I think from our perspective, we look not only at a channel mix from a top-down perspective, but use attribution and more granular efforts to understand what's happening within channel, so that you're not just looking at altering budgets across channel, but within channel.
Within channel, yeah.
But you can do both. You don't
Yeah,
have to.
but I would
make a
say
choice,
it's
one or
very
the other.
important to still test. There's a lot of misattribution. There's a lot of, there are mirages, right? So I'm an analytic person, and there are mirages out there that you can convince yourself are real, and you have to test to make sure that they are real.
But I think that also goes to, Jim, your point earlier on the consumer and constantly having some tap into the marketplace to understand how consumers are reacting to your campaign from a brand health perspective, I think is important to keep you on track.
Yeah. Gail, you were going to say something before.
I just wanted to build, because I know Jasper and Mark are here from the ARF, but the point about creative and the importance of creative is also about having that we learned from the Ground Truth study was that having a consistent strategy is critically important, but then to customize across the medium, because people were often taking, I'm sure you can relate to this, television
Yeah.
advertising and twixing it over onto another platform, and it just didn't, it
That's
doesn't
one-
resonate.
That's one thing to keep in mind when you use market mix modeling, is market mix modeling represents what's happened on average in everything you've done within a specific channel. So if you're looking at TV, it's an aggregation of all the TV you've run, how you've run it, 30s, 60s, the mixes. It's a glom, it's an average, right? And if you have certain channels or certain spends, like maybe display ads, you're measuring the aggregate benefit of those ads, even though you might have put them in lots of different places and lots of different flavors, and they average out in the model. And it could be, to your point, that some of them worked real well and were in the right spot at the right time to the right people, and others were terrible, and then the average comes out mediocre. And you say, well, I'm not going to spend any money on display ads because they're not working. So you really need to get the granular detail underneath each of the media spends.
Yeah, we're involved in a project right this minute exactly like that, where a medium is being kind of held its feet to the fire, prove yourself or we're going to dump you from the plan.
Right.
There's 3 or 4 ads in rotation, and I got a feeling a couple of them are terrible. And the conclusion may be the medium doesn't work, whereas if you looked at the individual creative executions, you might say, oh, the creative didn't work. But
Right.
we see because this good one worked, the medium can work for us. So I think, creative could not be more important. You saw it, we've seen it repeatedly, and then it gets ignored. But I wanted to ask you, Mike, about your rapid fire kind of testing. Doesn't that lead you to a short-term view, short-term solutions, and does it lead you to overlook long-term implications, or how do you get around that?
Yeah, sure. It doesn't reflect what happens to the brand and consumer perceptions of the brand through repeated exposure to advertising. So you need to track that kind of separately and over longer periods of time. My disappointment is that most market mix modeling doesn't do really a good job, even though it looks at data for 3-year time periods, doesn't really do a good job of assessing the impact of cumulative ad exposures across multiple media on brand metrics. If that's one of the objectives of the brand spend, the marketing spend, which it usually is. And it does an even poorer job of then connecting any shift in brand metrics to increases in sales. It just doesn't work that well. Now I'm sure there are vendors out there say, oh yes, it does, come to us. But it's not that easy. It's it's something that's a little difficult to do, especially for a bank. So if you're selling toothpaste, it's kind of cause and effect. It's an immediate purchase or almost an immediate purchase. People don't decide to go to Citibank on the spur of the moment, right? It's an accumulated perception of the brand that people develop, and it happens over longer periods of time. And if you want a financial relationship, there's a lot involved in trust and things like that. So brand perception drives selection to a very great degree. And what we'd like to know is, okay, so how is accumulated exposure to media, to advertising and marketing, online, offline, what we call above the line, below the line. How does it drive that? And then how do those changes in brand perception drive business over longer periods of time? So when I talk about testing, I'm talking about testing if there's a recommendation to shift money into TV, for example, from other types of media. You need to get out and test that right away somewhere. Carve out a market. The quicker you do it, the better off you are, because you'll understand to what degree the models are working and not working, and whether they can be calibrated to work if they don't work.
Yeah.
There are so many other advertisers that I've spoken to that actually do digital attribution and do market mix modeling. They just take the results and run. It's crazy. It really is. It's crazy. As a former modeler, as somebody who used to build statistical models for a living, the only proof of the pudding is when you put it out there in the marketplace and it works. It works as works. Right. The other thing I would say after hearing all this is that you don't really have to concern yourself about what's under the hood, what analytic technique is being used. So I'm conversant in a lot of these techniques, neural networks and so on. As advertisers, you really don't have to care about that. All you have to care about is when you put it out in the marketplace, does it work? Right? Don't concern yourself with all the details of what's under the hood. They're just a distraction. If it works, it works. And define what works means in advance, and then throw it out there and see if it fits the criteria.